Today, I have George Tyrone Simpson with us, and we're going to be talking about his entrepreneurial journey from the basement of his house that he had built that was a burnt out shell, originally relocating from Atlanta to creating a company in Washington D.C. And then we're going to talk about what is the difference between the company when the company first broke a million and to where it is today, which is far beyond that. So, if I missed anything, please, George, fill in the gaps.
Okay. Yeah. So where do we want to start is the question. So let's
Well, let's start with an intro. Like, I know personally, you're a marathoner, you're a triathlete, you're a philanthropist, you're a family person, you're in the community, you support politicians. You do a lot where you really are in the community and supporting these nonprofits out there. Number one, is there anything about you personally besides being a car enthusiast that I missed?
no. I think you hit it. I think fundamentally the journey starts way before just wanting to start a business. It's your desire, and I say this all the time. And I was having this conversation with a lady in a coffee shop today, and we were laughing because she was like, "How did you start your business?" And I said, "I think my father helped me start my business because we were talking about." She said it was cold outside, and I was like, "Oh." I said, "You have to think about it. It's really not cold. It was 60 degrees yesterday." So I said, we have to balance out the mediums in life. So I said, we should just enjoy the fact that it was 60 degrees yesterday and it was warm. And today, granted, it's 40. So I said, let's just appreciate the medium and say, let's just be happy. I was like, think about it. And I said, if we go back 3 years, it really hasn't snowed in DC. So what am I getting at? In 1979, we had a huge snowstorm in DC and the DMV area to the point where we had to like dig ourselves out of our houses. But I still remember once we had our sidewalk shuffled, the cars cleaned off, my father found a way to give my brother and I shovels. And we actually went to the airport, National Airport, where they didn't have all the covered parking. They were open parking lots. And we sat out there the entire day and shoveled people's cars out of the snow. And that was my first taste of having a lot of money. I thought I was rich. So fundamentally, that desire that my father put in me and how to make money pretty much kicked it off. And then from then, he gave us snow shovels in the wintertime, rakes, in the
In the
fall,
fall, yeah.
and a lawnmower that we had to keep up because if we broke it, we had to pay for it if we were cutting other people's grasses. So I think it started early off, and like my father kind of instilled in me, he got up early all the time. For him, he was driven by money, but he worked hard at it. And I think
Mhm.
I got the same kind of philosophy. It was about, how do you earn money? And I think, to be honest with you, and it all kind of changed, when I went to college. Before I went to college, I started working at UPS and I was lifting boxes. And my father clearly said that you can join the union, get a good salary. They can't fire you because you have union protection and you can work there, until you retire, get a house, car, and everything that you need. And the only thing I kept thinking about was my back hurts. I'm not lifting these boxes. I'm going to go to college, So that kind of transition for me into I need to work smarter, not harder. Not to say that physical work is bad because I do it all the time, but I think that, trying to put yourself in a position where you can pretty much maximize an opportunity by doing something different outside of just using your body pretty much led me in a different direction. So
So when your dad,
he taught me my work ethic. That's what I'm saying. That's why I believe I work hard.
now for those that don't know, was your dad an entrepreneur?
I don't no, not at all. Not at all. I mean, he's an entrepreneur with the specs that he wanted to make money, but he was not creating business or industry. Let's look at it from that perspective. Did he take care of his family? Absolutely. Did he make money? Yes, he did. But fundamentally, he did not create wealth for other people. That's how I like to put it.
So, going through that process where you saw your dad, working hard, and also he understood opportunity. So he did teach you how to look for the opportunity. Because
Absolutely.
that's the person of industry, I'll say, to think to pack up these kids and drive them to basically a warm market. And it's an untapped warm market because no one else out there is ready to shovel somebody out of their parking lot when they get off the plane. Actually, nobody else out there is probably going to make it besides the snowplow drivers. So for him to go where the opportunity was and bring you all, he was definitely instilling a lesson that seems like it continued throughout your life.
No, totally agree. Totally agree.
Now, all all those things happen. You're in school, you're in Atlanta, and you're thinking, okay, I want to go back to DC. When you thought I want to go back to DC, what was the thought process? Was it to make millions? Was it just to get a footing in the marketplace?
Yeah, a lot of people know me, know this story. When I was in Atlanta, I actually worked at a law firm. I thought I was going to go to law school. Realized how hard these attorneys were working. Still wanted to go. Right, took some pre-law classes, registered at Georgia State, and I was in my early 20s. I think I got in Atlanta when I was 21, 22. But the whole thing was, I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a lawyer. And then I started working at a law firm, and I started realizing that these guys are sleeping under their desks. They're sleeping in their offices. Not to say they're not making a lot of money, but they had to bill in order to get paid. And then you had to stay in a law firm for 7 years to become a partner. And if you didn't, they're going to pretty much boot you out. So, I mean, I kind of got some fundamental lessons through a kind of osmosis and trying things that I thought I wanted to do. And then I was like, I always had this kind of entrepreneur spirit. So I partnered with some guys. We created a hair care company, and it's called Vision 2000, which we were pretty much going to different colleges doing hair shows. Needless to say, one of the entrepreneurs was, he actually worked for Bronner Brothers as a consultant. So, I mean, it was like whatever was coming up, we were trying to invest in. I tried to invest in a nightclub. I tried to invest in a bunch of different things and work angles in order to say, hey, what's going to make me successful? Needless to say, was going to move back to Atlanta, was going to move back to DC because I was hungry for entrepreneurship and I thought my network was better in DC than it was in Atlanta. Needless to say, the mayor that I supported politicians at the time. So I was helping Bill Campbell run for office. And when I told them I was going to move back to DC, they offered me a job, in the city of Atlanta. So what happened, even though I was working for the city, I still had three different hustles going on at the same time because I'll never forget my first salary in the city of Atlanta was $30,000, $30,888. I was like level two or whatever system it was, and I still remember to this day. And when I told them it wasn't enough and I was still doing all my side hustles trying to make money, they were like, "Oh, we have a better job for you." The second job that they gave me was 50,514. So I remember these numbers because they stick with me. Because then I met guys outside of the politics that were making millions, and I was like, "I'm inside, they're outside." I was like, this was something's wrong with this, right?" I was like, and I'm the one that was paying these vendors through my department millions of dollars. So I was like, I don't know if I could sustain this lifestyle because I can't see myself giving someone $1.8 million for 45 days worth of work, and I'm only making 50,514.
Mm. So
So,
you saw the opportunity.
oh my God, did I? So at that time, you had the Y2K coming up, you had all this other stuff. Everyone was tech heavy, real estate heavy. So I created a food distribution company, parallel the contract that I was giving out to another company. I won contracts in other cities outside of Atlanta. I hired the company that I gave the food contract company to for the city of Atlanta to service those guys. And I established Allure Food Distributors off the hustle of another company, winning work outside of the city of Atlanta to prevent any conflict of interest. So that's how it kind of started, right?
So would you say that was your first major enterprise?
Well, that was the first one that made me real money. So let's just put it that way. So I mean, think about it, and you think about like in the '90s, if you're making 50,000 at 514, some people were like, "Oh, you're doing well." I'm not gonna lie. Some of my my family members were like, "Oh, you're doing well," and, and the only thing I could think about was like, "No, I'm not." So
Mm.
because I'm seeing a different, I was seeing something bigger. So long story short, I decided to leave Atlanta, but I was strategic about it. I had a food distribution company working in Marietta and these other outside areas of the city of Atlanta to prevent conflict of interest. I had it for 1 year. So what did I do? I resigned, you know, in the right before they really needed me to make this program happen. So then I was like, y'all can consult with me, which was totally legal. So I had a consulting contract, which would take care of me and my family as we moved back to DC. Then I still had my auxiliary sites where we fed sites outside the city of Atlanta. So my food distribution company was providing breakfasts and lunches to schools that were Title One. You can say low income facilities, recreation centers, churches, programs of that sort. And then, I was like, cool. The next year, guess what? I could bid on the city of Atlanta contract because, I was out of my 1 year period. A contractor can bid on it. And that's the first year that I actually made, like, I can tell you the numbers. I'm a little embarrassed by it, but I made my first $275,000 in 45 days. So
Mm.
that's what happened. I remember it like it was yesterday. And then, I was like, okay, this is what life is about. It's about, developing enough money where I don't have to work for the rest of the year. And that's what brought me, at that same year, I had moved back to DC, and that's what led me into real estate. So when I moved back to DC in that same year, me and two other guys invested in it. We created a company and we bought a portfolio of properties from an estate. So that's how the real estate practice started.
So when you got to the real estate practice, you're back in DC now. Just timeline it all. The family is moved here. You are you? Did you buy your own house? Were you just staying somewhere temporarily?
No, no. Let me tell you, I bought a condo up here when I was living in Atlanta because we have a family member who was heavily into real estate and found a great deal for us. But when I moved up, he said, I have a potential house that you should look at. So of course I moved my family into an apartment across from the Marriott in a very nice area called Crystal City, where you could walk to the subway, walk to the grocery store, walk to the mall. So my wife was coming from Georgia. So it's like I had to make her feel comfortable because of all the rumors about DC. So I had to kind of like balance this out. Needless to say, I stayed in an apartment. I bought this house that you were talking about. Like, yeah, he was right. It looked like it was burned down. Water was dripping from the third floor to the basement. I took my wife through, and she literally looked at me and said, I can't believe we really bought this house. So it was the first time that I was like, what did I get myself into? Had no experience in building, no experience in any of this. But, the guys that I partner with told me that this is a good investment. Larry Gardner told me it was a great investment. My other buddy did rehab. So we worked together and we rehabbed the house. And then finally, we've kept that house for the last 20, December, December 28th, 2000. So we've kept that house for the last 23 years.
Now, just so for listeners who are trying to understand real estate in DC, how much did you get the house for?
$138,000,
What would be the value of the house today?
like 1.3, $1.4 million.
that's, that's insane.
But the upside of it is, and I've been watching TikTok, and I really just got involved in TikTok and Instagram like a year ago, and
Mm.
I've been watching it. And someone had a little show on there that said, "Make your house your bank." And I was like, I never thought about it like that, but that's exactly what I did. I actually, once the market started to increase, I took out a second on the house, and I probably bought three more properties by taking out a second on the house and using the equity in the house to invest in other properties. So, since then, I've continued to buy properties based on my first house and the equity that I built in it. We were just fortunate at the time because the valuations in the DC real estate market, it grew exponentially. So it wasn't like a long, slow growth. It was an exponential growth over that course of 5 years.
I mean, to take a property from 100 and some thousand to 1 point X million, that right there is amazing. Let's dive into. You said there was a bunch of companies that you started. A number of enterprises that you were either part of, partnered with, or were running yourself with some assistance. There had to be some failures in there. So,
Oh,
do you know if you had to pick one of those failures, which one would you say was the most educational failure?
the first one, when the city contracted me back, remember when I said I kind of a reference back when I said the city contracted me back, and paid me my 50,514, to pretty much consult for that year, for that summer, I literally thought I already made it. Like I made my salary. I wasn't thinking about reinvesting. I thought the real estate market was going to go fast. I thought I was going to make money immediately. No, it's a very slow, long game. So what I did, I'll never forget, and I don't know if you've seen me wear this watch, but I have a Cartier Tank Francais, and I bought this watch. And I realized out of that 54,514, I spent $5,000 on a watch. And then after I did my taxes, I realized that I spent like it was
10%.
my pockets. Exactly. So I keep that watch as a remembrance. Never sold it because I'll never get a check again and take 10% of it and go buy a watch with it. So to me, that was a clear lesson in what to do and not to do, with your money, So,
Well, I think now if you were to do that, you're talking about $1 million watch. So it's not something that you would actually want to do. But we all had those lessons, and a lot of people listening to this thinking, oh, he came out and he jumped in college. There's the opportunity when you're in your 20s to risk everything, right?
mhm.
There's nothing you can't risk in your 20s. And you have time. You have time to recover if you're wrong. So for those who are listening to this, number one lesson, it is absolutely true. When you're in your 20s, you have time to recover. However, you also have to think about how you're going to grow.
Mhm.
So even with the piece that he mentioned about the house becoming the bank, he didn't go into it with that initial thought. He made a good investment that led to it becoming a reality. But when you're making lessons, or when you're involving yourself in opportunities, those lessons later on could be very profitable if
Mhm.
you're doing it with the right people. Because he also mentioned that he wasn't doing these things on his own.
Oh,
He
absolutely.
he had a
Definitely.
team. He had people who were knowledgeable about the industry, and he had never got in more than what he could lose.
Right. You seek advice. Trust me, the number one thing you can get is advice. And listening to people, it totally, I put my trust in people who are experts.
And do you now, kind of at this level, still talk to other individuals who are at your level or higher?
Oh yeah, people in the company kind of hate me sometimes because I'm like, they already know before I make a decision, I may run it by three of my friends first or someone who is an expert in a particular industry before I make a decision. Even though they've given me their white paper, they give me their analysis, I would like give me a few hours and just let me cross-reference this because I want to make the right decision. And if you get enough people telling you you're going in the right direction, typically you're going in the right direction. And I'll give you one great example. My attorney, who actually helped me years ago and still a very close friend of mine, is a real estate attorney. We're about to buy this building, and it's a group of us. There's four of us, and I was like, I need you to look at this, this LOI, this letter of intent, because this building is kind of quasi owned by the government, two private corporations. I've done transactions before, but nothing like a public-private partnership on this level where you're going to have to pay disposition fees and everything else. Just complicated. So
Yeah.
I sent it over to my attorney and I went through it and I thought I gave a good analysis. I said, wait, I sent it over to my attorney. I call him Tab. Tab, what do you think? Tab sends me back a one pager. He goes through all this. He finds everything that I miss. I get on the phone call. Whew, I sound like the best attorney, the real estate attorney in DC. Needless to say, I was like, no, my attorney pointed this out and I referenced him. The key to it is, if we think we know, then we're going to rush through something and we may miss something that's critical in any kind of negotiation or contract. So even when I write a memo or a letter, I definitely let it sit and then I'll have my attorney in my office read it before I just fire something off, right? You want to be precise, you want to be correct, but ultimately is you want to be right,
Yeah.
So, I always say pause, don't jump into anything that's too good and slow walk everything. And, and
Yeah.
I and I have explained this to you before, our company didn't hit a lot of home runs. We are a singles and double company, and we can get into what our company does whenever you're ready, Brent. But the key to it is a lot of singles and doubles will get you to winning games all the time. There's plenty of baseball players that have never hit a home run in their life, but their single and doubles have made them win the game. Every once in a while we hit a triple, but typically we're a single and double company.
So you mentioned the company. Now, your biggest company, I believe, I have to say believe because there's always something new to learn about you, is Spectrum Management. And then you have Deca Development. And this part people might find interesting. You're a owner, part owner in an ultimate frisbee team called DC Breeze. Are those your three primary businesses or are there others?
There's definitely others. So what happened is, yeah. So and I'm not saying that I'm like I'm not saying that I'm
No,
wealthy.
it is. If there are others, there are others.
But what I am saying that, when you're investing in real estate, when you're investing in other companies, I have investments in a pizza chain, I'm investing in a mental health company, I'm investing in a substance abuse company, so I think you get to a point where once your company starts to do well, and at my particular age, you're looking how can you divest? And then also it's like, what's your next goal? So it's simply like, you keep doing the same thing all the time, you can get a little bored, So the question is, how are you divesting? How are you building your portfolio? How are you going to take care of your family when you leave? Is your estate set up? So, once you get to that point where it's like, okay, I'm making good money here, but how long is this money going to last in this pool? So I'll
Mhm.
go into, if you want me to go into like the first company that got us there, I can do that.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
All right, cool. And so the first company, what happened when we bought those three properties, I'm sorry, when the three of us bought that six property portfolio, we created a company under an LLC. Well, after we pretty much redeveloped the property, sold them off, we then the LLC was going to be dead. So one of my colleagues brought an opportunity to us to say, can you do property management? And I was like, of course, I can do anything. I had zero employees. We were finishing building my house and I had people working on the house all the time. We were living in an apartment. And I said, of course, I didn't even know what it was, but I just know I needed the opportunity. Long story short, we took that company, I changed the name to Spectrum Management, and we won our first property management contract, based on the development side of what we created, based on my past experience in working, with the company of Valor. I took all of this like managerial construction experience that I really didn't have. I just managed a bunch of people who did plumbing, electrical, carpentry, so I had no idea. For me, it was about management rather than it was about architecting, as my colleague would say, architecting the deal rather than working in the deal. My business partner who passed away quite a few years ago, he used to always say, we are the architects of deals. So that's what it was. We architected this deal to the point where we qualified and checked all the boxes. So what happened, they gave us 80 properties, and these are properties for vacant properties that had fences, trash, graffiti, all of this stuff. So we had 80 properties to manage. I had to borrow my father's pickup truck. I hired the one guy that was working on my house. And I was like, do you want a job? Didn't speak great English, but I knew he was a hard worker because he was working on my house. And then I got family involved, and we all got together and pretty much ran a company. And I'll never forget, it was paying us it was first time 180, it was like 50. It was paying us $12,000 a month. Within the next year, we were over 80 properties, and then we were generating over $1 million a year managing vacant properties. My famous tagline, and I always liked clothes and shoes. The reason why I liked it is because, when you're younger, you didn't have a lot of money, you couldn't dress like you wanted to dress. So I would dress nice, and they'd be like, "Are you an attorney? Are you this?" And I say, "No, man. I cut grass, pick up trash, and remove for graffiti. And when it snows, I shovel snow." And I carried that tagline with me for a long time. And people would just say, "What does Ty do?" Cuts grass, pick up trash, removes for graffiti, and shovel snow. They were like, "You're a well-dressed maintenance man." And I was like, "Absolutely." But the key to it was it's like, I thought it was like I felt like I was stealing money, even though I was building a company. It paid so much and it didn't require a major intellectual skill set.
Hmm.
So I think that's what it was. So I felt like, we're doing well, but it still wasn't enough. So the individual that his name is Jose Bonilla Ricardo Hernandez, the first guy that I hired has been working for us for the last 20 plus years, from that initial contact and working at my house, which I'm very proud of. Every time I see him, I mean, I see him all the time because he still works in our office, but yeah, that's our first employee. So that,
No, that's awesome.
so that company went from managing vacant properties, and then we started managing buildings. Then we started managing military bases, forensic labs. So since then, we went from one guy in a truck to the maximum number of employees we've had is 153 employees. And we currently today average about 105 employees. So that's what we're averaging today. And we
No,
went,
no,
yeah.
let me jump in on that real quick. With building a team that big, what would you say would be most companies' failure when hiring or building a team?
Ooh. So it's difficult. So there's transitions to this, right? Early on in my career, we hired people who had a work ethic, and this is where if you told me you were an athlete in high school or college, you told me that you were competitive in anything, that was inspiring to me because most people who are competitive, in my opinion, don't like to lose and they want to prove you wrong. So early on, I would hire people without the skill set required, but with a work ethic that would get the job done. I didn't mind training or hazing. I mean, some people say I haze them, I'll be honest, but the other side of it is you can't come to me and just ask me for the answer without even trying to look for the answer first. So anyone who had that kind of like, I'm going to try to figure this out and then bring back the response, I would work with. As the company matured, you have to then start hiring expertise in those particular areas in order to make you successful. One is business development. So, if you're going to put any money behind your company, you want it to be in business development and research and development and business development, because that's what's going to grow your company. You have to have the opportunities there in order to grow. And then, the other factor that gets all companies, and it got us as well, is human resources. Lawsuits they happen all the time. We've had slip and fall lawsuits. We've had, actually, we're dealing with one right now. It's public. We have someone said that we didn't pay them all their hours lawsuit, so it's like, these are situations where you have to provide the experts in to make sure that you're checking all the boxes from a legal perspective, and the compliance issues, think about it. When I started, it was one guy in a truck, then there were two of us, then it was one guy in four trucks. One guy with four people in one truck. But the objective is, at that time, we're thinking we're paying people to do something, but we weren't abiding by all the labor laws associated with the District of Columbia, nor we were abiding by, like, think about it. Even if someone, you have a 1099 worker, if you put them on a federal contract, you have to pay them like they're a federal employee. So these are all lessons that I learned going along, rather than pretty much having the expertise in the beginning to do it. And as you start to grow, you start to think about how much you can lose in the process by not doing the right thing. Because before, we took risks that no one would ever take. And that's the difference. Once you start to get to levels of maturity in your company, you start wanting to protect the company more.
Well, I think that also is because of the levels in income, right? So when you're starting out, you have to do the risk because you want the money.
Correct.
But then you get to a certain point where you actually have enough money now where you want to protect it. I mean, it's very similar to, just investing in general. When people invest and they're starting to invest with no money, they're super risky. But once they get over that like 2, 3, 4, 5+ million mark, they just need to protect it. They don't need to gamble anymore. And so, looking at what you did, and when you turn that corner and say, what, I want to protect it. If you had to talk to the version of you when you first started Spectrum Management, what would you tell the version of you when you first started Spectrum to do quickly?
Wow, that's a good question. There's a lot. There's a lot to unfold with that. There's a lot that I'll give you the best example in the world. Whatever you do, hire a tax accountant, hire an accountant. Honestly, hire an accountant. So I played accountant, HR, marketing, BD. I played a lot of different roles. I'll never forget when I gave my taxes to someone to do, right? And I thought I was doing it in QuickBooks, and lady calls my phone. I'll never forget. I'm actually in Atlanta, like doing some business down there. I get the phone call. This is IRS agent so and so and so and so. And I just like, yeah, right, click, hung up the phone. Lady calls back. This is IRS. I just said, stop harassing me. You're not an IRS agent. I think it's a scam. Click. And this is like in the 90s, like going into 2000. Needs to say, the third time she call me back at this number to see if I'm real. So I called her back. Oh, it was a real IRS agent. She was scheduling an audit in the office, in the basement of the house that we did. And I'll never forget when, and I had an argument with her. I made her pretty upset. But I told her that I was the accountant, the marketing person. She said, well, I'm a professor and I teach business. And I was like, remember the Rodney Dangerfield movie? I was like, yeah, you teach theory. I'm in practice. Needless to say, I had to get a real accounting firm. And she was taking me to court. My receipts that I kept, which was a box of receipts.
Yeah.
You didn't write who you had lunch with, what it was for. She said, I'm going to disallow everything. So at that point, I got the accounting firm and a legal tax accounting firm, and they had to redo all my taxes. So I actually lost, not lost, but I think it was the best $50,000 I ever invested. My tax liability went from almost $500,000 to $382,000 to a settlement of $157,000. But I spent $50,000 to get those reductions. So, I mean, honestly, I think in this today's day, this generation, I mean, anytime now I can take my phone and scan my receipt and put it on there. Anytime that y'all have this ability to track everything, whatever you do, get an accountant to make sure you're putting it in the appropriate box. Because my box was like neighbor's box full of receipts. So I have to say that was a lesson that I got. And ever since then, the accounting firm that got me out of the mess was my accounting firm for the next 10 years.
Wow. Wow. So when you pick professionals now to consult you, how do you choose them?
I choose them a couple of ways. One, do you understand my industry? Do you understand, our line of business? Like, if you don't understand government contracting, and you think you can sell anything, that may not work because a lot of us is no face-to-face meetings. I think a lot of us is RFPs, what goes into them, soft networking, getting in. So one is like understanding your industry. Two is pretty much having a desire to pretty much want to make us better. Some people just want a job. So, if you're going into BD and you hire someone like, oh, I want $200,000 a year, this is my past, but you could have a past in like, working at Frito-Lay selling potato chips, but sometimes that skill doesn't carry over into, blind RFPs bidding on projects where no one knows you and you just have to pretty much write rather than be personal and sell. So I think number one is knowing your industry. Number two is finding someone that you can work with that's going to motivate you as much as you motivate them to actually help you succeed. So I think you have to find someone who's going to complement you in your efforts to want to work well and to succeed. If that person comes to you and they have no goals, they may just want a job. So they want to have goals for you and you want goals for them. So you make sure there's a balance in this relationship.
And how important has it been to be around people who were like-minded?
That no, number one. And I think we talked about, like you said it earlier. I was an athlete in college. I was all right, wasn't that good. I did well. But what happens is, I was always second or third. I think relays we came in first, but never on my own. Even in high school, always second and third. I remember everybody who beat me. In Maryland states and PG County states, I mean PG County track meets. I already know the guys who beat me all the time. Even in college, in our division, I can tell you who beat me. Fundamentally, when you're coming in second and third all the time, you're still working hard to want to be first.
Yes, yes,
So,
I would agree with that.
so what's happening is, I always stayed athletic. So everything from starting to run, 5Ks, marathons, I blew out my knee, started running triathlon. And what I noticed, the relationships that I have in my adult life, you know, professionally,
Yeah.
all around kind of like-minded people who drive themselves to accomplish something. Most of my friends who are like marathoners and triathletes, and I have guys cycling all around America and everything else, these guys are driven. You know what I mean? And it's not simply like I can tell you of my direct, athletic cycling crew, most of them have their own businesses or they're at the top of the levels in their careers. It's like I think you have to be around people who are going to push you physically, push you mentally. You know what I'm saying? Being around people who what's it called? Not gaslighting. What's the term when someone gives you a compliment all the time when they're saying, "Hey, you're the boss," whatever.
Yeah, the yes people. I know what you mean.
The yes people, and simply, the bottom line is you don't want people like that around you who's just co-signing on what you're doing. You want people around you who's going to challenge you. I love it when my staff comes to me and says, you might want to look at it from this perspective because I think you're wrong. I mean, to me, that's exciting. But most people who get to the point of like where they think they're comfortable in their careers and they know everything, they're like, just like I know everything. No, you always have to be eager to learn and be around people who's actually smarter than you. And that's what I tell my staff. I was like, and don't get me wrong, I say this all the time. I was like, when your best is not good enough, you need to find someone or something else to make you better. Because sometimes my best is not good enough. And I recognize that all the time. So I have to pull in resources to make me and the company better.
When you get to that place, is it normally introspective or someone externally tells you that?
For me, a lot of it's introspective because I don't mind expressing when I don't know something, and that's imperative for you as an entrepreneur and as a business person. It's okay not to know. You have to be curious. You have to pretty much want more knowledge, want more information. I'm sitting in a meeting and they'll say some acronyms or something like that, and I'm like, "Excuse me, I have no idea what you're talking about." And I'm very comfortable saying that. And it's okay. It's okay not to know. Just don't do it all the time. Then they're going to think you feel special. But every once in a while, it's okay to like not know something. I think fundamentally is like if you're curious about something and you research it, then you come back with another question. Then it's like, oh, your curiosity takes you to another level. So I think
Yeah.
you always have to be curious in what you're trying to do.
And for the entrepreneurs who are listening to this, curiosity is really important, not only to have, but to let the people around you know that you have, because you can accidentally cause a very uncomfortable situation because you're genuinely interested in knowing, and people might see you as a know-it-all, or they might see you as a person just doing too much. You're trying to outshine everybody else. So when they know that you have a genuine curiosity about it, a passion for it, and you really drive hard, people don't look at you the same. And we forget to level set the environment. You have to level set your environment so people know who you are and why you do something. So if a person was, just for instance, if somebody, you knew they were competitive, um, tree pusher, car pusher, whatever you want to call it, like they competitively push things around, and you see them out in the parking lot pushing a car, you're just going to think they're training. But if you see somebody out in the middle of a parking lot pushing a car and you don't know why they're doing it, you're either going to think they're crazy or they need help. But it's just the difference of a sentence that the person might have had with you before. Oh, I'm training to competitively push cars. And now when I see you doing it, you're not crazy. Control your environment, control the narrative of what people think when they engage you, because if without that type of enlightenment, they will reach their own conclusion about who they think you are and why they think you're doing whatever it is you're doing, which a lot of times can be completely wrong.
Mhm.
And so, for those ambitious people out there who are starting a business, or even those who are at that $5 million mark, was there any difference when you were at 5 million to when you broke 10 million?
Yes. More responsibility, more people, more human resources, more accounting, more strategy. I used to drive like, get to 100 million, get to 100 million. The question is, where are you profitable? So you're going to get to the point where you're like, you have this big grandiose number or where you want to get to. But when we started to get bigger, I started to look at it differently. I was like, can I save on this? Can I cut this down? How am I going to be more? How's my net rather than the gross? I have friends who simply said, "Hey, I want a $50 million contract, but you won the contract at 2%, and that's 2% profit, not 2% net. But they're
Mhm.
excited because they got a $50 million government contract. Then I have another friend who has nothing but a $5 to $6 million government contract, but he's netting $1 million a year to himself every year out of the contract. So I think once you start looking at growth, I think you have to look at your bottom line. If you want to, and I tell everyone this, one of my favorite books is The Richest Man in Babylon. So and I give it to like everyone on my staff has gotten it, our interns get it. And fundamentally, you have to look at where you want to be, because you can have $100 million company, $50 million company. You can have $1 million company and you can make $100,000 a year. But think about how much you're working for $1 million company, only making $100,000 a year, where you could just go get a job and you have no responsibility. So, I mean, you have to put yourself in a position where you have a goal. You also have to streamline yourself to like, this is how much I'm putting away. And you have to look at your opportunity, like, what are going to be my challenges at a million, 5 million, 10 million? Our challenges came once you get to, it's not, it wasn't the money that was a challenge, it was the employees. Because once you get over 50 employees, you're in a different set of rules with
Requirements, yeah.
right. So then you get to 100 employees, you got another set of rules. So, I mean, that's what you have to look at. Like things change. Service Contract Acts, anytime you're winning some of these big deals, you have, and I always say this, everyone says, "Hey, Ty, you're the boss. You have a growing business." I was like, no, 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 no. I said, I'm not the boss. I said, I have to answer to all my contracting officers. I have to answer to the procurement office. I have to answer to my contractor's legal team. So I'm actually working to keep the contracts in house. So I'm only making decisions that benefit the company, but I'm a worker even though I run a company
Yeah,
because we all answer to somebody. So from
that's true.
1 million, 5 million, 10 million, I think it's going to come with your infrastructure. So just make sure you build the infrastructure accordingly to meet all the guidelines associated with having that many employees. And we were just dealing with the situation today, to your point, where I think it's in Maryland. I don't think DC has it, but once you get over 50 employees, there's a mass layoff clause in the Department of Labor, which you would have to pay them out for 6 months. So it's like different states have different rules. And and luckily we're not doing a mass layoff, but we have a contract that's terminating and we're going to have to lay off like 20 something employees. And we have another contract coming on the back end. So it's like those are the legal side of it as you grow is not the financial thing that moves you. It's going to be the responsibility associated with more employees that actually either make your performance greater or hinders it.
And you talked kind of what you said, alluded to, living in the margin versus living ahead of the gross income. And you have to live in the margin, not ahead of the gross income. And, even speaking to just managing it all, we did a podcast, or actually, I did a podcast earlier today when we were talking about the ERCT, PPP, EIDL, all these loans went out. And, some people were forgiven, some people commingled funds, some people, didn't pay their employees correct. I mean, it's so many issues with it. We had to unravel it for some of our clients earlier. But when we were unraveling it, we realized that some people didn't even know that the EIDL is supposed to, you should have started paying on it like last year.
Right.
And that's not forgivable. People were mixing it up with PPP because it was just free money floating around. And it goes back to what you said. You have to understand the laws associated with growth. You have to understand when you get over 50 employees, who else do you need to hire? Because why are you going to go into that state when that state's laws say this, this, and this?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just, oh, it's growth for the sake of growth. You have to look at intelligent growth
Mm-hmm.
and then align it with, can you manage it?
Right.
Like, do you have the infrastructure to take it? Success can kill you as fast as failure.
Absolutely.
And so when you're doing all these things, how in the world, I had to watch myself, how in the world do you just remember or organize? Or, like, you have a lot of business. We didn't even talk about Deca Development. We didn't talk about DC Breeze. I just found out about the mental health company. I just found out about the other company that you mentioned. So how do you manage it all?
Good. I have a good staff now. So and I think you've known in the history, I used to do a lot by myself. I used to just I mean, I just grind. I'm at the office now, like I'm like the last one to leave, but I get up every morning and work out. So that's what happens. I'm way more productive in the morning, and the evening time is like for follow-up calls and other stuff. But honestly, this year I did take my office manager and make her my executive assistant. So it's my first one. So now I definitely have a lot more help. But before it was all about it was just grinding. It was just setting up the phone call, setting up the meetings, following up with people. If you say you're going to do something, do it quickly. Do not let us sit and wait. So, as soon as something, I give you a great example. My father's, he's about to turn 80. He's now like, pay my bills. Here's my bank account number. He gave me a call and said, hey, 193.66. And I have it written down right here. I wrote it down and I was like, you know what? Let me pay this right now. So the question, the faster that you check the box, and you pay the bill or you make the phone call, then it's off of your plate. To this day, I still do to-do lists. People are like, you should block out your time. There's different strategies. But if I write something out, it's easier for me to go down there and say what I had to accomplish today, and I put it right in front of me. I use something called Wizard Wall.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny. I met the guy who created this company, but it's like this sheet of paper right here.
Yeah.
Literally, and I'm not selling this to anybody, so just FYI, it's not a plug, but it is the best stuff ever. But you can take it and you can put it anywhere. So if Mike is watching this, I'm plugging Wizard Wall, and then I can just write on it and I can like take it off. But the key to it is I put those lists of what's important right in front of me all the time, so I can literally make sure I check it off. And if I don't, it's right there for me to do it the next day.
Now, being at this level, does it seem like you still have further to go, or do you feel like, okay, you know what, I'm done?
You got to realize I enjoy it. I can see if you said in your life, I want to be a rock climber. I'm going to work the next 25 years. I'm going to make this amount of money, and then I'm just going to rock climb. I do know people like that, or I've done this, I've created this, I'm done. I have a friend who's an architect, he's not architect, engineer, lawyer, developer, got this much money. Now he's an artist. But I think I like people. So, can I be done? Absolutely, but I still enjoying it. I still enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy coming to work. I enjoy developing people. And henceforth, like, I, what do you do when you start to get to the point where your company's doing well, you're making money? Oh, let me invest in an ultimate team. You know what I mean? So the DC Breeze is a professional ultimate disc team. I'm gonna say Frisbee because that's a branded name for Frisbee. But we pretty much, there's 25 teams across the country, 2 in Canada, and it's like a combination between football, soccer, where the disc moves the field, 7 people. But the key is, like, it's a great sport. It's not as diverse as I want it to be. I'm the only majority African American owner of a team in the league. But the sport, pretty much, and the athleticism associated with it should be in every middle school and high school, because the only thing you need is a disc, and the athletic side of it is tremendous. So you're pretty much playing, on a football field, running up and down for an hour. So I want to promote the sport in the inner cities, for athletic purposes, through the school systems, but I also want our team to win a championship because of my ego. When you always are second and third, I'll give you a great example. Our team has come in second in our division for the last 4 years. So I'm like, I'm tired of being second. I want to go to championship weekend. So it's like, we're investing heavily, in our players, their travel, to get to championship weekend. So if you look it up, it's the dcbreeze.com. It's a lot of fun. It's a money loser, but the key to it is it's a good thing that I have, my company, who's one of the sponsors of the team, so that's where Ultimate Frisbee comes in. How did I get involved in Ultimate? When I was in Atlanta working at that law firm, never forget, I was on there. I wasn't a lawyer, but I was on their basketball team, flag football team, baseball, softball team. And then they said, can you play Frisbee? And I was like, dude, I'm from DC. I've never played Frisbee in my life. What are you talking about? The little thing with the ring. Needless to say, I got out there, I enjoyed Ultimate, and then, come back to DC all those years later. And then my colleague actually bought the team off the internet. And then it's grown in the last 10 years. Our team is 10 years old, but it's grown to the point where the league alone is probably worth about 15 to $20 million, for all the teams in an aggregate. And we pretty much represent DC as a city. So that's exciting to me. It's like, it's auxiliary fun, but I would not be able to afford it or venture into this hobby without me having Spectrum and DECA. And DECA, what happens is Spectrum Management is a facility management company. And then what we do is we provide, most people will understand this. If you go into an office building, the guys walking around in the uniforms, making sure the lights are on, it's cool. If the plumbing is broken, they're running to your rescue. A pipe burst, they're fixing it. All those guys in the building, they work for our company. So we manage a lot of contracts for maintaining facilities on the labor side of it. And then what happened, we were outsourcing all of the repairs to other companies. So if, like, say, for example, I'm gonna give you, like, if you take your car to Jiffy Lube, they check your oil, they fill your windshield wipers, they replace your spark plug, but then a week later, your engine dies. It's not Jiffy Lube's fault. They just did the maintenance. So when the
Right.
engine dies or the air conditioner dies in your building, our company will call out another company to fix the air conditioning. So I got creative and I was like, I'm tired of calling the other companies to fix something in the building because I felt like they were making more money than we were making. So I created another company just to fix everything that was breaking in the buildings that we had contracts. So that's the auxiliary company that does mechanical, electrical, and plumbing repairs. But Spectrum Management provides the labor and the preventative maintenance. We're the Jiffy Lube for your car on multiple. That's how I just put it.
And so, one of the last questions is relationships. How important have relationships been to you along this journey?
Oh, they're number one. So let me just break it down. I've expressed this, but I think we've had this conversation before. I'm a giver. I give more than I take. And I think that when you're creating a business, people want to remember you for something. So a phone call, LinkedIn, all the stuff this new generation does, but meeting someone, even if you don't have any money and you have a credit card and you want to take them out for a drink or sit them down for dinner, that's where you're going to establish your personal relationships. I mean, people are saying they're doing it on TikTok, but having that one-on-one experience is the key to pretty much saying, I actually did this with a person. The
Mm-hmm.
quality time associated with that goes a long way. The upside for me is I've been involved in politics for a very long time. And I saw how important relationships were in politics, across the board. If you're doing the right thing, providing the right services, helping the right people, then they will always help you back. And I talk to people about the law of reciprocity, not to use it as a tool to game somebody, but it's just a natural occurrence where a great example is if you came into my office and I offered you water, or I'm eating lunch and I offer you my lunch, or I offer just to buy you lunch. A lot of times people walk out like, God, that guy was really nice, this, that, and the other. But what happens is, 5 years later or something like that, something comes up and, I ask you for a favor or you something like that. Most of the time, people will reciprocate 10 times what you actually offer them the first time. I think there's a book where they talk about the guy in the classroom who pretty much asked people if they wanted a Coke and it was 5 cents. And then all these people asked, yeah, they wanted Cokes. And then 2 days later in the class, he said, does anyone want to buy raffle tickets for my kid's drawing? And they were $5. So all the people who actually he gave a Coke to that was costing like, 50 cents, he got $5 plus from those guys because of the fact that he was just willing to do it. Now, some people use that as gamemanship, but I think what you want to do, you just genuinely don't want to expect anything from someone you try to help. You do it out of the kindness of your heart because you are a representative of your company. The better relationships you have, the more comes back. And I can tell you, I've probably gotten tenfold back, but I've lost a lot along the way. But I'm good. I feel great about all the decisions that I make when I try to help people. Even my employees, I give them multiple chances, because I try to value them, train them, help them, build them. And then once you get to the point where that's not happening anymore, you can make conscious decisions to let them go or something like that. But invest in your people, invest in relationships. Don't seek anything out of it, even if it's just advice. You know, I think it goes a long way, and that's one thing and I think Brent, this about me. I try to help everyone who asks me as much
Yeah.
as I possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, to a fault at times, but yes.
Well, you would say that, but I can also walk away and say I consciously know I did everything I could to help that person to the best of my ability, and I feel no guilt, resentment, or shame.
No, all these things are important. I mean, we thank you for your time. And for anybody listening, a couple key things to take away, I would suggest. Number one, relationships are extremely important. Choosing who's going to work with you is equally as important as who's going to work for you. Choose quality people, make sure they know the industry, they have a passion. But this is the part I'll say for those who are listening and say, well, how do I do that? You have to know what your core values are first.
Mhm.
If you can identify what your core values are and then do an alignment assessment when people come in, the faster you can figure out their core values, it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. If their core values are completely opposite from you, if they're the best, if they're the smartest, if they're the quickest, if they're all those things, they will not align with the mission and the drive of your company. At some point, you will bump heads, and it probably be at the detriment of your business. So, looking at what type of trail do you leave? When people leave your presence, how do they feel about you? In this conversation, we noticed that he had an absolute strong trail of people feeling very happy. I mean, it's the best word I could use after coming in contact with him. His staff, you're talking about having somebody for 23 years. You don't do that unless the person genuinely enjoys you. And you don't do that without taking care of them above and beyond what's probably normal sometimes. But you know what? It actually is normal when you put that type of time behind any relationship. And relationships aren't going to be even. This never going to happen. So for all you all thinking, oh, I own the company, I'm never coming in. He said, I go work out and he's at the office. I'm at my office. And so I'm going to go work out after I leave here. But, these are things that you have to consider when you get into it. And that's why you should align. He also said this, I absolutely love doing this. That more than anything else, that's what you should take away. When you walk into your own office, because this podcast is for entrepreneurs, do you love it or is it just you chasing the dream? You can chase and catch a ghost, but the one thing that will happen as an absolute, you'll still have nothing. You can catch the ghost and you will still have nothing. Make sure when you're building your business, it's a passion that is underlying your true curiosity for whatever industry you're in. And with that being said, is there anything you like to say, like last words for our listeners?
Perseverance is the key. And if you're in your 20s, I have a 23-year-old, and I totally agree with everything that you said. You have to explore various opportunities. Don't boggle yourself down with life. If you don't like what you're doing, change it. Figure out what you want to do early, and then what happens as you get to levels of maturity and you figure out what you like, and then focus on that. And then secondly, I just want to thank you for hosting this podcast. Anything that I can do to help young people you get better, or older people, it's like, I'm willing to do. So Brent, if you need me for anything else, I'm game. And if you read there's a couple of books that I also get: Richest Man in Babylon, Fundamental Principles of Money. And then the other one is Getting There. So it has everything from Sarah Blakely, Bloomberg. Read about entrepreneurs' journeys, like the guy who created Nantucket Nectar, the juices. The dude was a Dartmouth graduate, but he was a bum hanging out, selling juices on a boat. And then an idea came about and they sold real juices. So read about other people and their journeys, because everybody's journey is different. So everyone who goes to Ivy League school doesn't mean that they're going to be uber rich. I think the question is, like, I was a C student, I was a number 2, number 3 guy. The question is, your passion, desire, and perseverance is going to get you over the line. And that's why I like the book Grit so much too, because once you become successful, people start to judge you for your success, not knowing what it took for you to get there. And
Yeah.
you have to stop them to simply think that, they say that, you'll hear this, you can just write it off, you own a business. No one knows what it took to get to the point where you can afford what you actually buy.
Yeah.
So, value your business, value your journey, value your commitment into pretty much persevering to become successful, because you're going to fail, and it's gonna get bad, and you're gonna get sad. Just understand that. And I'll be honest with you, one of my favorite songs was I don't know if y'all watched when Colin Kaepernick was on the bus. Had a really bad day. Stuff was going on. Had a lot to do with the next day. I got up in the morning. I started playing that song. I'm the man. I'm the man. I'm the man. You got to realize, right? You can pump yourself up. No one thinks I'm egotistical, arrogant. But the key to it is you have to motivate yourself to do